the Rangers Journal Night.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday night's edition of the Rangers Journal. We are 3 days on from Saturday. Rangers got the victory against Hibs for the first time in many weeks that we were talking about. Great to come away from the weekend and get into a new week with a win under our belt. But tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. Tonight we're going to look at the engine room of the Rangers midfield, what drives us. We're going to talk about our midfield roles, balance, and we're going to try and get into some player deep dives as well. So first and foremost, everyone, welcome to tonight's show. I have got three wonderful guests. Doug is here to help with the hair side of things because me, Ross, and Ross are a bit brutal when it comes to hair, but Doug will help us out with that, so it should be good. Ross, I'm going to start with yourself first. Top right, how are you doing, Ross? I can't describe you another way because there's two of you, so I'm just going to go with top right and bottom left, but if that's okay.
I know this is going to be an absolute disaster, isn't it? I'm good. Good evening, guys. How we doing? Because you can't even say Baldross and not Baldross because it's even Baldross, and then
exactly.
Call me good looking Ross, right? Call me good looking Ross, and then we'll move on for there, right? I'm good, guys. How you doing?
Excellent. Welcome, mate. Welcome. Good to have you. Doug, how are you doing tonight, mate? You all good?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thanks. I think we can go with good-looking Ross and intelligent Ross. How does that work?
I think that works well. And Ross, bottom left. I'm not going to hit you with the good looking and the bad looking.
I don't think I'm good looking or intelligent.
How are you, mate? You good?
Yeah, good, mate. No, that's the one. Cheers.
Excellent. Great to have you guys. As I said, obviously a few days on now from the Hibs result. Good win, good performance overall, we'd probably say in that one. Obviously, one of the ones we'll probably talk about tonight is the man in the middle, which was Nico Raskin and the performance he delivered, and it looked so much better with him in there. Before we get into the midfield piece of it, let's have a quick recap and see how we're all feeling after the weekend. So, Ross S, you've just changed that there, so I'll go with that. That's the best one. Ross S, how are you feeling after the weekend's performance? Is it better? Is it what you expected, or was it just a stay of execution for the main man, do you think?
I mean, it couldn't get any worse. A win it's this rarely seen thing. It's like the unicorn at this point where I obviously forgot how to celebrate a win. After the game, it was astonishing. But no, I think probably coming out of the game, and that obviously in the kind of fallout of it, people were going, "Oh, well, it's a stay of execution. It's it's just kicking the can down the road," as was the pod title last night. But I think probably now that things have calmed down and we've probably had a chance to analyse the game a little bit more, we actually could have made it a little bit more comfortable than it should have. I know Hibs had the goal chopped off in the first half, but bearing in mind we scored 2 goals in the first half, and then in the second we could have had another 3 or 4 quite easily if kind of luck's on your side. But at that point, when luck isn't on your side, it's just about getting the victory, especially in a cup tie. Just get through. The aim of the game was to get to Hampden, and we've got to Hampden, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So yeah, pleased.
Good, mate. Good. And Doug, what about yourself? It's good to be talking about a win and a good performance rather than what's been happening over the last few weeks. Anything for yourself you want to pick up on from the weekend, or anything you think's a point to note?
No, like Ross said, it's just nice to remember what the winning feeling is like again. I do think we don't want to get too carried away. I said on I think it was a post match. I said that while I expected if we didn't change something that we would lose, having done that, the team does have a history of getting up for these more high jeopardy games, if you like. Normally that means Europe, but tail end of last season, they did it in Old Firm games as well. So like this game and the coming game against Genk, part of me does expect them to do a bit better because they have a bit of a history of doing that. So for me, the real litmus test will come in the Livy game when we're back at a kind of one of those, without disrespect to Livingston, one of the kind of generally lower team, mid to lower teams in the league that we should be beating comfortably if we're at our peak. but that we've struggled against recently. So that'll be the real litmus test for me. And it's a case of, looking at that game and just going, okay, some things were better, but not everything. I'm not getting too carried away, because I don't think it was actually that different from the Hearts game in a lot of respects, other than because in the Hearts game we had a lot of good chances, hit the crossbar and things like that. The difference was in this game we actually took some chances, and we did look more confident, and that confidence turned into a slightly better performance. But still levels to go. So, but it's a good start, and hopefully it's the start of the Russell Martin turnaround. I'd like nothing better than to be sitting here at the end of the season going, wow, remember when we all wanted Martin out? But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Sorry, I was talking on mute there. Apologies, guys. Absolutely, Ross, and look, sorry, Doug. I think great update on that one, mate. And Ross, from yourself, from your point of view, mate, good to see Nico Raskin back in the midfield, dominating where he should be.
Yeah, I think the win was most welcome. I think it was badly needed among all quarters of the club, the fans, the manager, the players, the board. Everybody, we needed to win that game. It was good to have Raskin back, and of course he scores the opener and puts in a man of match performance. I don't think there's any dispute that he was the best man in the park. It has been badly missed. I know we'll touch on it later, but I think the midfield has looked so unbalanced without him in it, and him back in there on Saturday was night and day to what we've watched in previous weeks when he's been out. It was a good one, but like Doug said, we shouldn't be getting carried away if it's a cause for, if beating Hibs 2-0 at home in the quarter-final of the League Cup is a cause for celebration, then I think that's the day we chuck it. That should be the minimum expectation. I'll take it and credit the players. They did play well. It was a good result, but this needs to be the norm now. This can't be like the Pilsen game that we always refer back to that was weeks ago. This can't be the new Pilsen game. This needs to be the start of us kicking into gear now and getting racking up the wins, because it's badly needed.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Ross. I think you're spot on with it. We shouldn't be overly celebrating a victory against Hibs at Ibrox in the League Cup, but I think we'll take it based on where we've been at over the last few weeks, and it's definitely progress, and it's great to see. I think obviously we'll talk about it in more detail tonight, guys, with Raskin and the impact he's had in the midfield that we've got. So I'll keep some of that until we get into the detail, but just a quick shout out, folks, to everyone watching. We've got quite a number on watching, loads of comments coming in already. Please like the page, subscribe if you can, guys. Help the channel out as much as possible. Keep those comments coming in. We'll try and get as many of them up on screen tonight as possible. And please join in the conversation with us as we talk through the midfield. So to set the scene for tonight then, gents, the engine room decides the game. That's what we're setting the theme on tonight. Let's talk about the Rangers midfield three, right? And Ross, I want to start, Ross S, I'll start with yourself, right, if we can. Just we'll talk about Nico Raskin there coming in and the difference that he's made into that side compared to previous games, right? Is he the ideal type of player that Rangers need and want at this moment in time? Or is he a luxury to have, do you think? And is he the type of player that is going to continue to command that deep line playmaker role, that number 6 role where he played on Saturday, obviously with no Joe Rothwell in there? Is that the type of player that Rangers need and want, or is he just too much of a luxury for yourself?
I don't know if a luxury is the phrase I would use, but what Nico Raskin has in abundance is heart, energy, and determination, and I think he's a perfect example of the difference between his absence from the Rangers midfield and him coming back into it is the perfect way of hard work beats talent, and talent doesn't work hard. Rangers midfields for years, successful Rangers midfields, haven't always had to have 2 guys in there that are ultimate ball players and can spray 60-yard passes. It's great when it happens, when we have successful midfields with Ferguson and Van Bronckhorst, or go back to Tern, Alberts, players like that who are sensational footballers. When you don't have that, you still need to have the energy, you need to have the drive and determination. And what Nico Raskin has in abundance are those attributes. And when you pair him alongside somebody who has perhaps a more of the ball playing ability, it's not a coincidence that you see far more output from the midfield. Something that we've argued a lot over the last kind of 3 or 4 months that the Russell Martin's been involved in is that the midfield is far too slow, far too static when you're playing guys in incorrect positions. I know we're going to get into a little bit more detail, but we've seen probably over the last couple of days, debates over whether or not Joe Rothwell, and who's clearly a good football player, I don't think you play at the level you're at without being a good football player. So I think I'd like to caveat that right at the start before we maybe get deeper into it. But he's kind of almost been, not quoted, but I think there was a clip online where he was kind of liking a video from somebody talking about him not being played in his correct position. So maybe he doesn't feel that he's been played in the correct position. Nico Raskin, I don't think was being played in the correct position at the start. So I don't think it's a coincidence that, I know it sounds really, really silly, but playing guys in the right position gets you the best out of them. Before you start implementing any sort of tactics within that. So he's 100%. And I understand people have reservations about, maybe his attitude and things like that. And that's totally fine, by the way. I totally understand that. But I'd rather have somebody in the midfield that wants to win and complains and moans, but at the end of the day, it's for the greater good. And and on top of that, he's a full Belgian international. Belgium aren't a Diddy team. Belgium are a top 10 ranked nation, and he's in their team now regularly. The support, the Belgian support, want him in their team because of the attributes that he brings. So to have him not in the team, regardless of fallouts or whatever you want to talk about with him and Russell Martin, was a dereliction of duty, because to get the best results, you need to have the best players. And at the moment, Nicola Raskin is the best midfielder that Rangers have got. So, simple as, he needs to be in the team. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, Ross. I think, for me, it was staggering the difference that he brought to the team on Saturday in that midfield space. And it was really interesting to see the position. Doug, just on the position we're talking about from Raskin, and look, we'll bring in Asgard and Diamonde, who also played in the middle there at the weekend as well, right? Out of the three of them, when you look at Asgard, you look at Diamonde, and you look at Raskin, who's the box-to-box in there? Because there's an argument to be had that all three of them could be box-to-box in terms of the way they play and the way they played, especially Asgard previously. But when you look at that and you look at that profile of those three players, who would you say would have been the box-to-box out of them if you didn't know better beforehand? And is there anything you would change from that midfield three in terms of their positions from the ones that you started on Saturday?
Can I give secret option C and say Lyle Cameron? I mean, I think you're right. Any of them can play that position, and I think Raskin has been to an extent. One of the things that, one of the sort of positives we can take from Ferguson's reign, I think, is that he does seem to have helped Raskin in his attacking play. He started scoring more goals in the latter half of that last season, and he's brought that. He's bringing that into this season as well, getting into good positions and particularly also being a threat from set plays, which is a big help for us. I kind of wanted to as well pick up on a comment that was made in the chat here by Nick, where he's saying the perfect midfield wouldn't have Raskin, as he's part of the reason we failed the league. I kind of want to challenge him on that and ask, in season 20, in season 1920, would you have been Daribo, Morelos, Tavernier, because they didn't win the league that year, despite the fact the following year when they did win the league, they were all right at the top in terms of goals scored, assists made. Yanis Hadji in 1920 only got 3 assists, and then he got 15 the season after. I think you need to take a more holistic view of that. And Raskin is quite clearly, by I think a comfortable description right now, our best player in terms of consistency. He also said, it's his 4th season. Well, he only joined in January in season 1, so it's 3.5. And in the second season, he spent at least a fourth of that season out because he was out for about 90 odd days because he was injured. That was one of the things that set him back. So I think, again, to just kind of say we should bin him because he's not won the league up until now is unfair on him as a player, because he's had a couple of setbacks there. He also once he came back, he wasn't immediately back in the team because the team was doing okay at the time. So he had to get back into the team and settle. And then once he has done that, he started to then grow and show what he's all about. As I say, the beginning of last season, we weren't, nobody was really thinking much about Raskin at that point. And then as that season went on, he grew into the player. And I think that's a really important thing about, when you're building a winning team, you need to have players that are growing, because that's part of what you do over a period of time. No team is built in a, Rome isn't built in a day, as the saying goes. And I think, well, maybe he's not been at his best in the entirety of his 3.5 years with us. He's grown into the team and into the player he is right now. And that's the important thing. And that's what we should be looking at. What player is he today? Not what player was he 3.5 years ago or 2 years ago or whatever. So I think Raskin has the potential to be that box to box that you said there, because I think he's good at both of those things. I personally, and I'll get into this in a bit more maybe when we're talking about the specifics of the positions and the combinations later. I'm not sure I would have necessarily a box to box per se in my ideal system, but like you say, I think most of them can do it. Maybe less so Asgard, because I've not really seen him defensively quite as much, I would say. He has marked players out of games, but I don't quite consider that the same thing in terms of defense overall. But yeah, I would say in terms of your question, any of them could do it, but I do think Raskin is a perfect candidate given what he's shown in his development over the last sort of 12 months.
Absolutely. And I think that, what I think is really positive with Raskin is he's got better season on season. Some players, when they come to Rangers, give you a first good 6 months, maybe first 12 months, they're okay, and then they regress back. The way Raskin, for me, has got much better as times went on. So I think that's something that he probably doesn't get a lot of credit for from the Rangers fans. But I think the difference from him on Saturday being in that team compared to when he's not, it's night and day. And I think that was a really good thing. Now, Ross, just on that one, mate, when you look at Raskin and what he's done, right, and he's came in on Saturday, the midfield looked much, much better than what they'd been. Okay, there was maybe a period of 10, 15 minutes in there when Hibs got that first goal and obviously got chopped off and things. They looked to be a wee bit more dominating. But I think once that first goal got ruled out, for me, there was only one team winning it. And I think at that point, Raskin helped those around him. He makes those ones look better. I thought Asgard had one of his best games in a long while. So just on that one, when you look at the type of player that we've got in there with Raskin, who can be that number 6 or he can be that number 8, is he then going to bring out the best in Asgard and bring the best out in Diamonde? And then when you look at even maybe Rothwell and Cameron, can they fit into that system and have maybe Rothwell, Cameron and Raskin? Or do you think it's going to need to be a certain type of player that's going to be in there alongside these guys? What's your thoughts on that one, mate?
Well, you're right in terms of when Hibs had their goal disallowed, there was only one team going to win it, and I think Nico Raskin was absolutely central to that. Everything near enough was going through him, like you say. He brought out the best, and other people, Diamandi's kind of had the greatest start to the season. I thought he looked pretty sharp. I don't think it's arguable. It's the best Asgard's looked as well, and that's going back to what I said at the start, what you just touched on there. I think the midfield had as close to a perfect balance as this squad's going to allow. I think each of the three players they can do all the same things, but some of them have their own have qualities stronger than others. Do you know what I mean? Some of them, they can all do it, but there's some that are specialists in it. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think they all complemented each other perfectly. And Raskin was central to everything. He was snapping. You could tell right away. I know, obviously, with the off-field stuff, it's not a surprise that he was up for it, but you could tell he was in the mood and for the off, and even before Hibs scored that. So I thought he was looking sharp and looking glad to be back. I think also, as I said, without him, the midfields looked a shapeless mess, to be honest. And I think even just his presence in there just smoothened it out right away, and it did help those around him. So those who played on Saturday and those who didn't, I would be comfortable that any of them could perform better than they have been performing with him alongside him in midfield, because he just brings so much, and he gives you that confidence as well that he's calm, he calms things down. He's like, he can do box to box, he can do pretty much anything in midfield. He's just close to a complete midfielder as we've got, and it shows.
And it's important as well on that one, Ross, why he brought him back in and why he needed to bring him back in on Saturday. I think if Martin hadn't have brought Raskin back in and the result hadn't went our way, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about this topic tonight. I think it'd be new manager topic we would have been looking at tonight.
Definitely.
So that's how important I think Raskin is to the team. But in saying that, I'm sitting thinking, see, we were talking about this, right? I'm sitting thinking about all the players that we've got in that midfield. So there's a midfield three that played on Saturday, right? Which you've got Raskin, Asgard, and Diamondi. As Doug says, you've also got Cameron to come in there. You've got Rodwell to come back in. We've got Bayrami that we've not even touched on yet, who I thought since he's been in, when he's been coming off the bench, has been semi-decent. You've also got potentially, I know he's more defensive, but you've got Dujon Sterling, who can come in and do the job for us, and they're in the middle as well. So Dujon would come in and he could fit in. He'd done that a couple of times under Clement, and his team's really well. Didn't look out of place at all. Ross S, coming on to yourself, looking at that midfield group of players that we've got, is that the best midfield group of players we've had in a long while at Rangers when you take into consideration the number of bodies you've got and the talent that all these players can bring?
It's a hard argument to make because we've had a lot of really, really talented midfielders without having the success to justify it. Because, I mean, you can even go back to, and I can't believe I'm even bringing this up, Todd Cantwell. I thought Todd Cantwell had the ability to be one of the best footballers this country's seen in years. He was really, really a sensational footballer, but what he didn't have was mentality. And I think a lot of the best midfielders to play in Scotland haven't perhaps always been the best footballers to play in Scotland, if that makes sense. You need to have so much more to play in this really weird topsy-turvy league that we have. It's not a coincidence that, you know, the top midfielders will still shine, but there needs to be so much to it, because I think players like Diamandi have the ability to be so much more, but I just don't know if they have the aggression. It was somebody that you brought up somebody Doug brought up. Joe Aribo was the same. He's a guy that had all the ability in the world, and he could nutmeg a mermaid in a phone box. He was sensational and absolutely probably one of the most talented footballers we've had at Ibrox in a generation, genuinely. But he just didn't have that something extra. You need to be a success here, regardless of how good you are with the football, and it's incredibly disappointing. But what we have, so it's probably not. I don't know if it's exactly. I know, to take away from your point, it's not really a question for now. It's only if whether or not the midfield pays dividends can we really answer that. Because can we say, will Thelo Asgard be as good as Joe Aribo? Well, we don't know yet, because if Thelo Asgard can deliver as many trophies as Joe Aribo did, now that wasn't a lot relative speaking to Rangers, but Joe Aribo obviously played in a league-winning team. Joe Aribo scored for Rangers in a European final. If Thelo Asgard can get to that level, then we'll be on to a winner. But it's difficult to say, but we have a lot of really talented midfielders who are very good at specific roles. The issue at the moment is that either we're struggling to fit them into the specific roles, or they just can't execute it properly. It leads back to something that I mentioned earlier, that I don't think Joe Rothwell's a bad football player. I just don't think we're utilising his skill set properly. So only once, whether it be Russell Martin or whether it be somebody else, can actually get the best out of the midfield talent that we've got, will we actually start to see the dividends out of it. So, but there's talent there. There's clearly talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, one for you on this one from looking at some of the players we've just touched upon there, right? And I want to come back to what you mentioned with Lyle Cameron, because Lyle Cameron's a player I think could be a worldie for Rangers. I really do. I think if he's given the time, he's given the game time, he's just given the freedom, I think, in there. I think he could be a really, really good player for Rangers. What's your thoughts on Cameron? I know he's out injured at the moment. There's some rumours he's out for a long time. Some rumours he's maybe back on Thursday and maybe back in for the weekend as well. Is he one that you can see being at Rangers for the long term? And is he one that you could see fitting into that midfield with others fitting around him and him cement his place in that team? Or do you think he's going to be one of these ones where he's in and out on a weekly basis, do you think?
I certainly think he's got the potential. I said at the beginning of the season, while I am in general a fan of Diomande, I felt that Cameron had the potential to take his position in the team, because I had the feeling that if he, really pushed on from what he'd done with Dundee last season, then I think he would potentially produce better output, because like I said, last season he got a good number of goals and assists in a Dundee team fighting relegation. So, I'm looking at that and looking at his underlying numbers and things and going, well, if he's playing in a dominant team that are giving him even more chances and he's able to create more chances by virtue of being in a more aggressive team, then I can see him doing even more. That being said, Scottish midfielders are all the rage in Italy, so I could get pinched at any second. We already had someone in for Conor Bannon, so I genuinely think that could be a possible danger in terms of his long-term stats. But I do think he is the type of player that is more likely to stay for a longer period of time because he is Scottish, and generally Scottish players don't tend to be as popular in terms of teams coming in to buy. Particularly, obviously, we're looking to get those types of players that we think can hit those really higher levels, because we want them to fit into the transfer model. But I mean, when you look back, obviously players like Scott Wright or Jack, these are players that have come in from the league and then stayed for a number of years, and to various levels of success. I know people don't generally consider Scott Wright in the best of views, but I mean, I thought, he was a perfectly good squad player. He came in, he was pretty much always available. He came in, he did a job. It wasn't always the greatest of jobs, but he had his moments, a couple of goals at Hampden, things like that. So, he's a perfectly decent squad player. But the thing that I would say that, kind of Ross touched upon as well, the thing that I really like about this midfield, I think it has the potential to be the best midfield in terms of the level of quality from first players to squad players, because I don't think if everyone's playing at their best or the potential best for some of the new guys that we don't know as well, maybe I think that you can maybe look at them all and go, there's not, maybe Raskin aside, there's not massive jumps between them all in terms of quality. They're better at different things. Their skill sets are different. So like Barron is not the same player as Asgard, but right now I wouldn't necessarily say Asgard is 100 times a better player than Barron. He's just better at different things, and Barron's better at different things. So you can play them in different ways against different oppositions depending on what you need. And I think that's good, because if you look at just as an example, so our 23-24 squad, in terms of midfield, now we still had Raskin, we still had Diomande, and we still had Kieran Dowell, so those players have not changed. But you look at obviously Todd Cantwell. I picked that one up because Todd Cantwell was in that, as Ross was in that. Todd Cantwell, I think he was a decent player. He actually had better output than some people remember. But then we also had players like Cifuentes, who just basically didn't play. Tom Lawrence, who was injured the majority of the time. He played well reasonably when he was in, but he was never in long enough. Bailey Rice, who didn't get really to play. Ryan Jack, also very injured. And you had Lowry and McKinnon, who neither really did much in the team. Hadji didn't play much that season. And then you had Lundstrom, who, as we know, kind of was really, really high. It went from really, really great highs to kind of really, really great lows. So I don't think there's necessarily the same kind of level of equality amongst that group than, as I say, as potential within this group. And I do need to say potential, because obviously, like Ross said about Aribo, some of those players in that group did great things. So that's still the challenge for this group to achieve.
And Doug, I think everything you've said there, I think you're absolutely 100% on the money with it. I think the potential that's there, I think, take away. I think what I'll come back to, the manager situation, I think, has overshadowed a lot of things with this team this season. I think the midfield we've got is fantastic. I think it looks a really good midfield, and you've got a competent manager in there who can get the best out of them. I think that midfield transforms itself. It really does. And I think this, for me, with the level of player you've got in there, with how young they are, how well you think they could play, I think this has probably got the chance to be the most exciting Rangers midfield we've seen in a long, long time. Obviously, given you had Aribo, Kamara, Davis, Arfield at one point in time, who were another excellent midfield for us. But I think we could really see something here with this midfield if they're given the time, if they're given probably the freedom to play in that midfield position, which I want to come on to in a wee minute. I want to come on to how we see that chemistry and partnerships work and things. But before we do that, Ross, I just want to link in with yourself on the midfield. Obviously, we had the midfield three on Saturday. Does he change anything on that midfield for Genk, or does he go with the same ones? Obviously, it's a combination at work, but do you see any changes coming up for this midweek in Genk?
No, excuse me. No, I would keep it as is. As we said, we noticed that I have to keep coming back to it. We noticed the difference in balance right away with the midfield. I think it would be mental to try and think about that. I think we keep it as is. The likes of Rothwell's, I agree with what Ross said. I don't think he's a bad player, but he's not had the greatest of starts. He on occasion doesn't look fit. He gets knackered easily. Cameron's injured, Barron's an okay in some game, but I think, like you have said, on paper, that three has the potential to be the strongest midfield three. And although we're not playing absolute top quality opposition Thursday, it's still a European game. It's the first game of the league phase. I think we need to win. It needs to be the strongest team. And on paper, Theo, Raskin, Asgard as the strongest three. So yeah, I think we need to go with that. And I think he will.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'd be very surprised if he was to change it. Given the result that we had there the weekend, the performance, I'd be very, very surprised if he goes in and changes it there. Folks, I want to move on to another topic with this, which is around looking at the chemistry and the partnerships in the middle. And I'm keen, Ross, Doug and Ross, to get your views on the combinations we think works best, and the creativity in there, and what we need to maybe sacrifice and things. So come on to that in a second, but I just want to say, obviously, loads of comments coming in, guys. Keep hitting that like and subscribe button. Thank you for all your comments and getting involved in the conversation. We're going to try towards the end, take some questions. I know we've got a couple of ones put to the side. We'll take some questions on and we'll try and get to them at the end. But just keep contributing, guys, if you can, because we really do appreciate it. Ross, I'll come to you first on this one, right? And what I'm looking for in this one, Ross, if you can, is who do you think is the perfect combination three for Rangers at this moment in time? And with that combination, what do you think Rangers need to sacrifice to get that? Because we know at the moment, trying to get the right three and trying to get the right partnership in that middle, or even trying to get the right formation for Rangers at the moment, is causing to be a struggle. And Martin seems to be changing up how his philosophy is and what he's doing. So what do you think the combination three looks like? Is it a combination three? Are you changing that up? And who would you have in there? What are you looking at in terms of the personnel and the numbers, and anything you think we need to sacrifice as well?
It really depends. And I know it's such a cop-out answer, but see, because we play such a variety of teams, it's total horses for courses. Literally this week, we're going to go from playing Hibs, who are an incredibly good counter-attacking team, to playing against Genk, who are more of a European style and are very good, dominant with the ball, to then 3 days later going to play Livingston, who are going to want to use their pitch to their advantage, be very tight, very compact. So I would be astounded if we played the same midfield three for those 3 times, because it's 3 completely different games that we're going to play. So it really depends. In terms of, you want to try and be as aggressive as possible, and I don't think you can emphasize enough how much. And I went back at the start and spoke about energy in the team, and I think that the more energy, especially in games in Europe, the energy counts so much more in terms of, because you're going to have to work harder because these teams are better and they're going to have more of the ball. That's why I like Lyle Cameron. I think Lyle Cameron is an absolutely outstanding buy for us. He was probably the best young player in Scotland last year, and we got him on a free. He's a sensational what he also has on top of, I'm talking about energy and drive and determination, is he does have ability, and that emphasises, being able to work hard and complement the other midfielders around him. Unfortunately, I think that might need to be sacrificed, and I'm going to kind of go against the point I'm making because of what Diamande brings, and I've been a strong critic of Mo Diamande because I think a lot of the things that he doesn't do well seem to be emphasised more when we're playing bad, and that's probably not coincidental. But he can be quite lazy. He can be very lackadaisical in his style. Something that has been thrown at Kamara and Aribo, guys who once have been successful here. And sorry, I know I keep harping back to them, but there's similarities there. But what Diamandi's very good at in these higher, they're not higher pressure games, but the kind of higher caliber games is the phrase I'm looking for, is that he stands out because he's a far, far better footballer. And he's got the ability to link the midfield, the energy of Raskin and whoever else we play in the midfield. I think it'll be Tello Asgard, because what I think Tello Asgard has shown so far in his early games, especially the last 2 or 3 games, and I know we were really bad against Hearts, and it's not a good example, but he's shown that he's got great physicality and he's got good ability with the ball at his feet. He's he's far bigger than I thought he was. When we signed him, I didn't think he was going to be as physically imposing as he is, but he's not a shrinking violet. There's a lot to him. He's probably got a bit of that, stereotypical Norse Viking genetics in him. Do you know what I mean? But he's got a good footballer as well. If I was picking the midfield for Genk, it would be Raskin's energy, Diamandi's ability, and Asgard's physicality. That's 3 key attributes that you need in a midfield. You can chop and change that depending on who you're playing, which is what I'm saying, is that I think you probably need more physicality when you play Livingston. You could probably sacrifice a little bit more of the football ability against Livingston to put in more physicality and more energy, which is where I think we would benefit more having Lyle Cameron, which is then obviously leads back to the argument you would have against Diamandi, that in these games where it's not really about keeping the ball, he tends to drift out of them, which we've seen already against Dundee or against Motherwell, where he's not particularly effective in using his skill set. So it's really all about getting the best skill set appropriate for who we're playing. And in an area like the midfield, it's so important. It is really, and it's such a stereotype and it's such a cliche, but it's the heart of it. And if your midfield don't get the midfield right, it doesn't really matter who you pick up front or in defence. You need to get it right, and that's my opinion. Is that it really depends on the game that you're playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ross, just so we've got this right, so are you saying continue with the 3 in the midfield, but just change up the personnel depending on the game, or are you saying change over the actual positions where they play? For example, when we started at the start of the season, Martin had the 2 midfielders and the deep line midfielder and the 2 midfielders playing out pretty much on the wings with the wingers, and they were overloading that side. Are you saying keep the 3 in the middle, or are you saying change the personnel? What would you be changing at that point?
I'd probably been sorry. I know I went on a complete tangent there and I completely forgot half your question. I'd probably be more inclined to keep the 3 because we've signed players to play as a 3. Diamandi could play as an 8, a box-to-box 8. Raskin wants to play as a 6. Rothwell wants to play as an 8. Asgard has been open and honest. He's like, I'm a left-sided 8. You've got guys to play as an 8. Cameron can play as an 8. I know he's a 10, but I think he's got more energy. He can play as an 8. I think we've just got more guys to be able to play a 3 midfield as opposed to, what do you want to call it, a double pivot and a 10. I think we've got the guys to play a midfield, a more compact 3, and so I'd be inclined to pick that. Yeah.
Okay. Doug, from yourself, obviously you've heard Ross's take that if he was manager of Rangers at the moment, who would have in there? Same question essentially to yourself, mate. In terms of that combination, what do you think works best in the middle? And probably just to add into it, just a quick one for you as well, Doug, as a secondary part is it surprising that we've seen now that 3 in the middle partnership for maybe the last 2, 3, 4 managers at Rangers, and nobody's really changed it up over the last few seasons? Is that a surprise to you? And who would you have in that middle 3, mate?
Well, first, I mean, I would back up Ross's point about the changing individuals for the challenges that come up. And you have to add into that as well that you're going to be forced into changes through injuries and suspension, things like that as well. And while I was chatting, I went and pulled our last 5 midfields just to see like what the kind of changes were. So like we tend to play that compact 3 with the 2 deep line players. We've done that in all 4 out of the last 5 apart from Bruges, where we played a sort of slightly flatter 3. But we had Raskin and Rothwell with Cameron as the advanced mid and against St Mirren. Rothwell, Asgard, and Cameron against Bruges. Celtic, it was Barron, Dio, and Asgard as the advanced one. The same again against Hearts, and then against Hibs there, Raskin, Dio, and Asgard with I say Asgard the most advanced. So I think from that you can kind of see Martin's plan. Certainly kind of the last 3 playing Asgard in that same position, the more sort of advanced player. Dio has a deeper line, and then obviously he's had Raskin in and out depending on how naughty he's been. For me, I would like to see us invert that shape slightly, because I think we can be more attacking and more dominant in the majority of games. It's been something that's been talked about, I think, across fans and various sort of outlets for a couple of years, that we really don't need to or shouldn't need to play 2 deep lying midfielders against basically 11. I don't know, I was right for the first time. 10 out of 11 teams in the SPFL. Now that may change. That sounds a bit disrespectful, perhaps, to some of the Hearts, the Hibs, the Aberdeens of the world. So maybe in some of those games you would, particularly maybe the away games, you would go for that more solid base. But I would like to see the one sitting, and that one would be Raskin 10 times out of 10. So unless he's injured or suspended, he's my sitting player all of the time. And then I would like to have more, as I say, to attacking, and because of that, I think it kind of pushes me towards Asgard and Cameron, because they are the more attack-minded midfielders. So you're not really going to play Barron in that role. You can play Dio in that role, but I think he does tend to be slightly better when he's a little more reserved. So for me, it kind of pushes those two. I think I would probably ultimately end up playing a bit more of a 4-1-4-1. With those guys pushed really up to support the central attacker, be that Miowski, Tremiti, whoever it's going to be, and try and make those connections. Someone touched on it in the comments earlier. One of the problems we're having is that connection between our midfield and our attack. And so that's kind of something I'd like to bridge. If we went really crazy, I might even go a bit old school and have, I say Tav or Magoma. It would 99% be Tav, push up and into the midfield when we're off the ball. When we're on the ball. So you end up with a back 3, Raskin and Tav as kind of the sitting, and then your 2 attackers as inside forwards, and then your 3. So kind of old school halfbacks and inside forwards. Just because I think we've got the players to do that, and really be really aggressive on it when we're, as I say, on the ball, and then use, like, I know I'm kind of coming out of the midfield here, but and then use players like Magoma as more counter-attacking options, because he's quite a quick player, and I think he's really good at running and advancing with the ball. So I think he could be really good at that. And in that scenario, you then have Tav sit in part of your back 3 as well. So I think we've got loads of options to change things up. And then indeed, like Ross said, change it from game to game. I don't like the fact that one of the things I don't like about modern football is that people are so wedded to one system and make few changes. Football players, should be clever enough and adaptable enough to play multiple systems and be good enough at least 2, but in my eyes 3 systems that they can change to when they start the season. They should be looking across, right, who are we going to play this year? You obviously you know exactly who you're playing in the league. You'll have to guess a little bit if you're playing in Europe who you might come up against, but even then you can kind of guess general systems, because again, a lot of teams play in a similar way, and it's one of the reasons you asked the question about why do we play the way that we do, because it's a popular way to play, and loads of teams play that way. You're so surprised that half the teams we come up against in Europe play the same formation and style of play. Like Genk are going to line up kind of pretty similarly to us, almost certainly. So again, like having ways to combat that, throw in something different. I think that's one of the things that's really missing from modern day football, is that bit of flair and throwing in something different. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to see. But without your question, I would have the certain midfielder Raskin and then Asgard and Cameron as the two advanced mids.
Spot on. Ross, I'll start off with, before I come to the same question from Ross and Doug there, right? I'm going to ask you another question to start off with. Why doesn't any team just use a standard 4-4-2 now? Is that not switching it up and doing something different compared to the Pep Guardiola styles and things, or is that me just being showing my age and 4-4-2 was the norm back in 20-30 years ago?
Well, we certainly won't under Russell Martin. That's what I was going to say. Obviously, this is a good conversation, but in essence, it's a pointless one, especially under Russell Martin, because he is not going to change for the way he plays. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't be against going 4-4-2, big guy and a wee guy up front, two fast wingers, one defensive midfielder, one more attacking midfielder. I would go with that, but and I agree. I don't think it's used anywhere near enough now. But I think it's gone. It might. All things in football are cyclical, aren't they? So it might come back round again. But especially with us, we absolutely won't under this manager with this team. We just won't.
100%. I think that's a Sean Dyche formation.
Yeah, we might if he gets the job. If he replaces him, we might. Yeah.
It's one of that. And just obviously the same question, Ross, to yourself, to what you had with the guys. Is that midfield three the combination you think obviously Martin will stick with in terms of the three in there, the deep line and the two above that? Do you see him changing it up? And what do you think is probably the best combination for Rangers at the moment, personnel wise?
I think for Thursday, that three that to pitch against Hibs is the three you go with. Like you said, Raskin sitting, Theo kind of more centrally, and Asgard is that kind of link between the forward and the attack. I think that would give it the right balance. But I also agree with what Ross said earlier about changing the team up depending on who we're playing. So Diamande, for example, I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think anyone would if Diamande was man of the match on Thursday and then the worst player in the park at Livingston on Sunday and get hooked at half time. I think with Diamande's performance, it's very much depends on the arena, the occasion, the opponent, how the game's going. So for Sunday, I would probably be tempted to maybe take him out and put in a Barron or a Cameron if he's fit. But for Thursday night, I would go with that three. I think it's the right balance, definitely.
Brilliant.
Can I throw a question at you, Chris?
Fire away, Doug. Go.
For your 4-4-2, how would you combat the fact that most other teams would have five in midfield against your four? Are you going to stick with having wingers that are like wingers, or would you play more narrow midfielders to try and do that, or have a striker that can drop?
I would have the striker that drops, if I'm being honest. I think for me, Miovski can play anywhere from the middle of that part right through. He can do your runs, your long runs. He can come short, drop off. Your Trimiti could be your guy who's your attacker. He's the guys that you want to play the ball up to. I would play the 4-4-2. The big one with the 4-4-2 for me is if you go with likes of Mikey Moore, the right hand side, he's not going to be one that's going to stick out in that touchline. He likes to, I don't know if this is just the way he's been playing or if it's the way Russell Martin is, but he seems to come in more centrally, and he'd done that a lot on Saturday. He was playing a lot more centrally on Saturday. He tried to stay out wide against Hearts. Didn't work out for him, so I don't know if that was maybe a tactic from Martin or if that's just the way Moore plays. But if you're playing that 4-4-2, then Moore's on the right hand side for me because he can come in and bring that midfield into a three if you need it. But again, you sometimes look at Rangers when they play the wingers, they don't always go with a natural winger. They could go with someone who's maybe a central midfielder, get out wide right. Somebody for me when he's back fit, you could look at in there would be Sterling. You could bring Sterling into that three if you were going to go for that 4-4-2, put him out wide right and have him shape up if you needed to. I think somebody said it, and I can't remember who it was that said it, Doug, but somebody put and I think it was Paul put in the comments to say, football's easy, we don't need to make it difficult for players, right, is what he'd said. And I think at the moment, a lot of managers are trying the difficult thing. They're trying things that are too complicated. They're trying to look too sexy with football. And sometimes football doesn't need to be sexy, in my opinion. Football needs to be A to B to C, scored the goal with D. That's essentially where you're at. Right now, I think Rangers are trying too much passing, too much intricacy, and you just sometimes you're sitting there at Ibrox and just want to say, just get the ball up the park. Just let's get the ball into the opposition half and get the ball into the back of the net. That's old school for me, and I'm very, very old school when it comes to that. I think all these formations and the movements, I'm not a big fan of it, Doug. If I'm being honest, I think we need to get back to basics. I think football in itself needs to get back to basics, because the 4-4-2 for me is the way I loved playing back in the day. Seeing it back in the day, anytime you're away from a 4-4-2, you thought, wow, somebody's taking a risk here, somebody's going with it. Now 4-4-2 is the risk at the moment, I think, is what everyone's saying just now. So, yeah, it'd be good to see it go back to a wee bit of normality, I think. A really good question, Doug, so thank you for that.
Football Manager will be much duller when you've only got 2 formations to pick from.
Absolutely. So, for me, one of the things I wanted to touch upon, guys, was we here in Scotland, and probably spend the next 5 minutes or so on this, and I'll come round the three of you for your viewpoints on this. The setup that we've got, that middle three, the three up front, the 2 wingers and your striker. I've looked at Rangers over the last few weeks since Martin's come in, and one of the things he spoke about was the low block, how we're going to combat the low block, how we're going to get over that. He spoke about it in being experienced and be able to beat that low block. I think he was on one of the sports channels, and he spoke about it on there really well, about low block and how teams should caveat it and get around it. We've not seen that from him at all yet with Rangers. Is this formation that he plays and the way Martin is set up, is that something that we think can beat a low block? Is it something that we just think he's never going to get over it because he struggles the same as Clement struggled and a few others have struggled? Or do we need to do something different? Now, Ross says, I'm going to come to yourself in this one. Let's go back to the Dundee game, right? We've tried the same formation the whole game, right up to about maybe 85 minutes. And then at 85 minutes, the only way you could beat that low block was by not playing possession, not going formation-wise. It was just throw everything at it. Are we set up to beat that low block, which 9 times out of 10 teams are going to come to Ibrox and put in front of us?
Can I counteract that and say I don't think it's a formation problem? Because I don't think the formation matters when you've got 11 men in the opponent's half. I don't think that matters. I really don't. To a degree, I understand the point of you're keeping guys back because you're sticking to formation, but you need to have your attacking. What would it even be? Your attacking 8 essentially, which is your 2 fullbacks, your midfield, and your attackers pressing an 11. We don't do that, regardless of whether we play 4-3-3, 4-3-1, diamonds, 4-4-2. It doesn't matter. We don't press enough. Beating low blocks isn't about what formation you play. Beating low blocks is about passing, moving, getting guys to make mistakes, and we don't do that because we're not aggressive enough. So it doesn't matter what formation we play. In my opinion, I think we're far too happy to get the ball and pass it along essentially the halfway line. Beyond, not even as far as the halfway line. Sometimes we're not even beyond the centre circle, and we've got Suter and Giga passing the ball, and at that point they should be at least another 20-30 yards up when they're passing the ball. And I understand that then opens you up to counter attack, which is what teams want, and that's what's taught us out, and that's fair enough. But you need to get numerical superiority is what these teams bank on. They're like, we've got numbers, we don't have better players, but we've got numbers, and as long as we stick a guy in front of you, you're not going to get past us because you're not going to try hard enough. And that's quite right, and they're quite within their rights to do it. I don't have an issue with teams coming and playing low blocks, by the way. I don't have a problem with that, because going back to your old 4-4-2 discussion, we watched Walter Smith in Europe play 5-4-1 at Old Trafford and get a draw and go, great result, park the bus. I don't have an issue with it in the slightest. I really don't. But I don't think we're aggressive enough, and we're not football intelligent enough to beat the low block, because you might have to move, because we're so ingrained to playing in positions that we don't break away from it to beat a low block, because essentially the low block knows that when player X gets the ball, let's just say when Raskin has the ball, Diamandi's going to go here, and he's not going to drive forward into space. He's going to check back and pass again back to Raskin, and they're going to just essentially pass it side to side between, and the ball, before it even gets anywhere close to the box, the opponent's box, Tavernier's going to have 10 touches. it's going to go between Tavernier and Magoma at least 2 or 3 times before we're even remotely close to it.
Mhm.
So it's easy.
Yeah.
We're such an easy team to defend against, and
Yeah.
I just think that's down to consecutive managers overthinking it. And I don't think
Mhm.
it's not a coincidence that we started to get kind of joy against Dundee when we essentially just went, let's just go gung ho.
Yeah.
And but that's the problem, is because you're so ingrained into a philosophy, when you start going gung ho, you eventually might get a bit of luck, but you don't know how to play that way. You basically get it out of sheer dumb luck. And in football, you make your own luck, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be going gung ho and attacking teams that we're infinitely better than in terms of resources and in terms of football ability. That's why, on a completely different pod, that's why I was an advocate for somebody like Kevin Muscat, because that's the kind of football that he wants, is totally aggressive on the front foot. Possession football's great, and I think we'll probably see the benefits of it more against Genk. I know we took a scudding off Bruges, but we've had possession-based managers. Gerrard was a possession-based manager. So was Beale. So was Gio. That's why we've seen results, because we were able to keep the ball when we needed to keep the ball, and we're also tight and compact. Being tight and compact's not going to help you beat Livingston. Being tight and compact's not going to help you beat Dundee or Motherwell. You need to be aggressive. You need to be on the front foot far more in the game than we are than the last 5 minutes when you're chasing a goal. And that's part of the problem for me. It's really just, again, it goes back to the comment from Paul. Football's simple. Be aggressive, be attacking. We're going to score more goals than you. And at the moment, we don't look like that at all, regardless of who we play.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, just on a couple of things Ross has said there. One of the things I want to pick up on was around domestic versus European. Would you say Rangers should have a difference in terms of how they play domestically versus European, both in formation and in personnel? Or do you think right now, and I'm basing it on right now at the minute, Doug, do you think we should keep it consistent, regardless of who we're playing, just to try and get that level of consistency from the players up and try and get the performance up? What would you take at this moment in time? Would you take a change to match who you're playing, or would you take that consistency just to try and keep the guys on a good run at the moment and try and get some wins under the belt?
I mean, I'm an advocate of in terms of players, I'm an advocate of consistency all the time, regardless. Because I think the more you play players together, the better they become as a unit. You start to create those little combinations, and players begin to understand, all right, Moore tends to do this, and so if I do this and I don't even need to look, I can slip a ball there because I know that's what he's going to do. You start to get those types of understandings. And I think you've seen that. If you look at any successful team, you'll find little combinations like that. You know, if you want to talk about your two up top, you know, your Catley and McCoy, Boyd and Miller, you know, these are teams, are combinations of players that knew how each other played. And we benefited from that knowledge. And I think you need that in any team and in all areas of the pitch. Central defence is also, in fact, probably the most important area where that sort of symbiotic communication is so important. If you know exactly where players are, there's a good clip actually of Rio Ferdinand talking about that with Gary Neville. He used to say, he said that the best time of his career was when Gary Neville played right back, because he always knew where Gary would be and he was, consistent in that. And so that made his job easier in terms of knowing, right, I'll make this run because I know without even looking that Gary's behind me in whatever position. So you need those types of things. So first and foremost, I say that. One thing I would maybe touch on slightly, we've kind of mentioned the Dundee game a couple of times. I don't know if that's the best game to refer back, just because we had a player sent off in that game, which changes the way that the game was played. But I think we do have a slight danger, I feel, currently, to over focus on the low block, in part because I would say at least half the league aren't playing a low block against us anymore because they're not afraid of us anymore, and they're coming to try and win games. They're not just coming to try and draw games. I made that point when I did the lowdown against Hibs. I watched one of the Hibs fan like equivalent of
Mhm.
of this, and they were totally confident going into that game that they could, you know, get something out of it, having watched the Hearts match and looking at how they were playing, and they were totally right to be. Obviously, they, as it turned out, they didn't particularly have a great game, and so it didn't work out for them. But the fact that they were so confident coming into it, I think we're seeing more teams play mid blocks now.
Yeah.
But even then, even if every team was playing a low block, like Ross said, I think sometimes you can like over focus on the tactics and the formation and things like that, and it's more about what you do with it. So in terms of the difference between Europe and domestic football, I don't think you need great differences in say the formations or things like that, but it's more just about how the players approach it. We've seen that so much in the last 5 years where you play the exact same team in a domestic game in the following European game, and they're like night and day. Like particularly the year we went to the final,
Yeah.
you had that team. I think I can't remember which match it was, but the commentator even said it once at one point. I can't believe this is the same team that played against and whoever it was we'd struggled against at the weekend before, because it might have been the Leipzig game, because obviously so many of those games we came flying out the traps and got early goals in the first like 20 minutes, and we were just so on top of it and so aggressive and playing really well, and yet we'd been playing like a St Mirren the week before and struggled and been slow and pedantic and methodical. So I think part of it is that, you know, it's finding the key to where's that mentality switch that they've clearly switched on for the European game, but couldn't switch on for the whatever the domestic game was. And I think you'll find that possession is more important in European games. If you've got the ball, they can't score. And so often in more historical contexts, the thing that killed us in Europe was losing the ball, and then teams who had the quality scoring from that, and therefore punishing us. Whereas I think one of the big things that has led us to be so much better in Europe over the last 5, 6, 7 years is that we keep the ball so much better, so teams don't get as much of that opportunity. And indeed, we have also improved at taking our chances. So
Absolutely.
I think those are the most important kind of aspects, I think, when you're looking between domestic and Europe.
Absolutely. Ross, just coming on to yourself, and we'll wrap this up with this one, and then we'll come on to, I'm conscious of time, so we'll come on to some questions in a few wee seconds. Just keep to hear your thoughts, Ross. Do you think Martin has abandoned his playing style in order to get back on side with Rangers at the moment? Or was Saturday just... Because Saturday was very different to how he's played before in terms of his structure and his setup and how he wanted the team to play. Was that on purpose, do you think? Or was that the players maybe taking something in their own hands and thinking, no, look, we need to try something a wee bit different here?
No, I think it was the manager. I think he knows he's at close to last chance saloon now, and he's against what he would normally do. I think he's just gone against what he normally does and tried to just throw something at a wall and hope it sticks. We've seen the Old Firm game as well. We didn't have that mad high line that we had been playing with. You could tell right away the team had a different setup to that, and that worked. Celtic were very good that day, but we didn't really look in trouble. We didn't really look like conceding. So that's a couple of times now, and like you said, I know Doug had just said about using the Dundee game as the example, but I'm going to do it again. That when it hit 85 minutes, he did abandon it, and it was just high ball, just desperation, just whatever, just somebody do something, and we got the penalty. I was going to say we get out of jail, but we never really. We still drop points. But so yeah, I have noticed in games that were struggling in towards the end, which has been a lot. You do see that change, and Saturday there was a difference, and the Old Firm game, I think, is the only time he's done that. If that makes it, that kind of setup, it did seem less gung ho. That, as I say, the highlight was not as high as it was still quite high, but it wasn't as high as it had been. So they really get in behind. But I don't know if it has just to do with the pressure mounting on him, because he looks and he acts and he talks like a guy that's under pressure. So I don't know if this is just last chance saloon. I'm just going to do this and hopefully this works. Maybe if he picks up a few results and things start to calm down, he might revert back to the way that I'd said earlier on the show that he is absolutely ready to. It's the money. He got Southampton promoted with, and then went into the Premier League and went to Man City and done the exact same thing, and then wondered why it never worked. So I think the only fear I would have with that is if say he does turn this around and he is the manager for the bulk of the season. I personally don't think he will be. I worry that, just touching on talking about Southampton going to Man City stuff, I worry that he would go to places like Porto and play like that with this massive gung-ho approach, a huge high line, and teams like that would just pick us off. So my concern is that he might not be as pragmatic and go with that, go with high line. But yeah, he is. I think he is doing it, but I think it's out of sheer panic and worry for his job that he's doing. I think if things calm down a wee bit, I think he'll go back to what he's used to.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. 100% spot on it. Folks, I'm conscious of time. We're just over the hour mark. If everyone is good to hang around, and we've got lots of people on, lots of comments still coming in. If everyone's good to hang around, I want to just spend maybe 5 minutes or so, and I'll come round the three of you with some questions that we've got here from some of the viewers. Just a minute or two on each if we can. Gents, Ross S, I'll start with yourself first of all. Talking about Saturday. So Bob has put a question in, which is around Martin Boyle. Would you take Boyle at Rangers and say a 2-year deal? I think we get him for under $1 million. What's your thoughts on that one, Ross S?
Probably not now. Maybe a couple of years ago, it might have been something to think about. But again, Martin Boyle's probably one of these players that plays really well against us. But if he came here, would he have the same impact because of the attributes that he has as a player? Is that applicable for us? As again, we play different styles of games that Hibs play. I've literally got Hibs game on the telly at the moment. They were 2-0 up, and they've drew 2 each. And Martin Boyle scores a penalty, but he has chances on the break. We don't get as many chances on the break. His best attributes are about using his pace and his ability to beat the man and finish. We don't get that nearly as much. Comparisons, Michael Halloran. Michael Halloran was the same. I know he's not a particularly popular character, and that's fine. But it's the same idea. He wasn't successful for the same reason. So, no, I wouldn't have him. Wouldn't entertain it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Doug, question for yourself. I'm going to bring up from Shona. Why haven't we seen Asgard making those runs into the box? It comes back to the conversation we talked about earlier. People deep line players running in. She said, surely he's been asked not to. Do you think, is that a side of the game that we're going to see from Asgard in terms of him making those runs into the box? Or is it more of a outside of the box type player in that middle three, and not really, because we've not really seen much of him get into the box for Rangers over the last few games. So what's your view on that, and do you think that's something he's going to be set up to do it?
Well, he made runs into the box for Norway and scored 4 goals, so I'd very much hope that we will see him getting into the box and scoring. He's obviously got the ability to. I've harped on about it for years that I want more midfielders to do that because I thought Arfield did it very successfully, and we've not really had many that have since. So I definitely want to see that, and hopefully we will. It's something that's missing because we do. Again, it's part of that link between attack and midfield. We need to have that support in the box, more players in the box. When you play your one up top, your one tends to drift a bit, either to one side or whatever, to get involved in play. And so you need a player to get into the box to cover that when that happens. It was a big issue during Morelos' time in particular. He would often go out and do good, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't do that, because he would connect well with Kent and things like that, but there was just so many times in games I would see Morelos or Kent or whoever was on the opposite end in a position where they could be potentially crossing the ball, but there was nobody in the box because Morelos had moved to help connect the play. So you need that midfielder to be or multiple midfielders to be making those runs to prevent that kind of thing happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross, question for yourself from Haggis Hunter. If they insist on playing Moore, would he be better as an attacking midfielder than play the likes of Ant-Man or Curtis on the wing instead? I think they've said left, but maybe on the right, maybe talking there. What's your thoughts on that one? Is Moore better as an attacking midfielder rather than an outside winger?
Well, I can't say either way because I've never seen him play in that position. I'm not sure. I'm not saying he hasn't. I don't know if he had for Spurs. Any time I've watched him, it's been at the wing, so I can only go in that. And he has had a tough start here. I think it's fair to say things. Even the other night, we kind of played well with a good result. Everybody's fairly happy with what was going on the pitch at least. But I still think he struggled. I know he's only young, what age is he? 17. I think he's short in confidence just now, but I think there is anytime I have watched him, there is ability there. So I would keep him where he is. I would keep him as a winger because that's where I'd imagine that's where he's strongest and that's where you get the best out of him. And although he's not started, but I'm sure if results pick up and stuff, I think, and he starts to kind of get used to his surroundings and used to being a Rangers player, I'm sure we'll see the best of him. And I would prefer it to be in his favourite position, which is that wide position.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we heard about Moore before when he came here is that he could play anywhere along the front line. So you never know, we might see him playing in that central position as well at some point if the needs must at certain points, especially when it comes to over the Christmas and winter period if certain players are going to certain tournaments and things. So yeah, we might find that we maybe need to do something a little bit different there with him. Ross S, I'm going to give you the final question that I'm going to take, just I'm conscious of time. This one is just on a player we touched on earlier, and again, it's a player that I totally forgot about in terms of the name. Where does Barron fit into this? Shona's saying she thinks it would be ideal against Libby and Falkirk. Would you agree with?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, it leads back to the point I was making. Perhaps would Barron be a better fit in a game like that, like Livingston away, than Diamandi? 100%. 100%. He's more suited to playing in that kind of game, that it's going to be more frantic, it's going to be more about who can win battles, who's got more desire to win. And I think that Conor Barron has more of those attributes than Diamandi does. I'm not saying that Diamandi's not, because I know I bashed him a little bit. I'm not saying that he's not got the desire to win, but it's more about just how you present yourself sometimes. It could be simple as that. It can be as simple as the first 50-50. You win it, then you go, God, he's up for. If you win it, you go, I'm up for this today. The opponent goes, they're up for it today. I'm not sure about this. Thinking that we've been thinking that over the last few weeks we've been a walkover. We've been a pushover. Do you know what I mean? We're talking about. There was a point that Doug made. Doug saying that teams don't play low blocks against us because they're not scared of us anymore. We need to make teams scared of us again. And I think that having that aggression and having the desire to win puts that back into teams. Whereas if we go out there in the midfield on Sunday against Livingston and Conor Barron wins his first tackle, gives the ball to Raskin drives forward and we make a chance, they'll go, they're up for this today. We thought they were maybe going to be pickings on the pitch, and think all these different things are so important. It's not just about one single fact, it's about so many different things that create the environment. And honestly, I think in that position, Conor Barron's still got a role to play. He absolutely does, 100%.
Absolutely. Listen, amazing. Thank you, gents. Just to summarise where we're at then, so really good discussion, I think. Really good some conversations about that midfield and what that three looks like and what that personnel could be. I think we're all in the same agreement. Stick with the same again for coming Thursday for Genk. It'll be interesting to see what he does do in that space. It'll be interesting to see whether the Raskin call was to save his job and whether Raskin is back on the bench on Thursday night and maybe someone else come in there or something different. Does he change it up with another formation? Look, I think question I would ask to anyone watching, anyone's looking at listening to this back or watching on live at the moment, give us your comments, give us your thoughts in our social media pages. Let us know who your midfield three should be. Is it a midfield three that Rangers should have? Could they change that up? Is there someone who's not at the club at the moment that you think they should be looking at in January and potentially coming into that midfield space? Or is there something that we've totally forgot about? And again, someone we didn't really touch on was Bayrami there, which is really interesting because he's not in that space at the moment. And a name that will probably send shivers down people's spines, Kieran Dowell. Where does he fit into all this? Should he be a Rangers player going forward? So we'd love to hear all your comments on the social media pages, guys, around what that looks like and what it should be going forward. Just really quickly, I just want to touch on a couple of things. We've got lots more shows coming up this week. We'll have the pre and post match for Genk on Thursday, as you know. We'll obviously have some shows over the weekend. Just touching on Thursday, gents, just quickly if we can, a score prediction from all three of you. Ross, bottom left, I will start off with yourself. What do you think the score will be on Thursday?
I'll be positive 2-1.
Loving it, mate. Really good. Doug, what's your thoughts?
A really good pod ruined by the idea that Kieran Dowell fits in somewhere, but other than that, fits in the stands. 2-0.
2-0. Loving it as well. I'd like to see a clean sheet. I know Ross is saying 2-1, Doug's saying 2-0. I'd like to see another clean sheet. I think that would be really good for the defence. I think to get their confidence up and see how that plays. So yeah, definitely at 2-0 I would take in that one. Ross S, what's your thoughts on Thursday night?
The only thing more miserable than talking about Kieran Dowell is Doug's cardigan. Sorry, Dougie, Curry brought it up.
I saw comments. I don't get it. It's nice and cozy. I'm starting to feel the chill of winter coming in. I'm an old man now, so.
Well, come to us all. Listen soon.
It's not mauve, it's brown, Curry.
We'll have our woolly hats on. Trust me, you're winning at this. I'm going to say 2-0. I'm going to say 2-0 as well, Chris. I think that a positive result if we play guys in the right position. We seem to have a defence that makes sense at the moment. Suter, Cornelius, Magoma, Tavernier makes sense. Play a midfield that makes sense, and play attackers that make sense. Play Gassama, play Ant-Man, play Majovski, and we'll win the game 2-0.
I'm going to say 3-0 for Thursday. I think Genk's in a bad position at the moment. I don't think they're firing all cylinders just now. I think we'll be on the up from Sunday. I think the players will be ready to go. You know, it's like European atmosphere, whether the stadium's full or not. European atmosphere at Ibrox is like no other. It's the best that's out there, and I'm sure the fans will get behind them, and I'm sure Rangers will react to that. I'm going to go 3-0, and I'm also going to hope that Chermiti gets his first goal. I think that would be a real big boost for the guy if he can get that in there. And look, I'll maybe go the whole hog. Hopefully I can pick up the phone to Russell Martin and ask him to do a 4-4-2 for me and give us back something basic again, and nothing major on that one. But we'll see how that plays out. Look, thank you everyone. We've been on for quite a while. The comments have been fantastic. Everything that's came through has been excellent. Really good some feedback. Look, we'll try not to do another night where you get the three Mitchell guys on here, because that just looks terrible in any pod. It really does. So apologies on that one, guys. Someone said something about the old Ross and the new Ross, so I don't know who they were referring to in those ones, but we'll go with that. Gents, just finally left to say thank you to you guys for being on. Thank you all for your contributions. It is greatly appreciated. It makes my job so much easier on this one when you guys are on and giving all the great comments. So thank you, gents. And finally, just thank you to everyone that's watching, everyone who's liked and subscribed, everyone who's put the comments in. Again, we can't do this show without you guys. A little bit something different tonight in terms of our midfield, looking at our engine room within the Rangers team. Hopefully, come Thursday, we're talking about a really good victory, and we'll talk about some good performances in that middle three again. And just lastly, folks, just remember, every night is a Rangers Journal night.